At Jackson Water, we are in the game and locked in on our goals. Every day, our dedicated teams are hard at work, ensuring that clean, reliable water flows to every home and business in Jackson. We are not just fixing pipes. We're investing in a brighter, more resilient future for our city. Jackson Water. Water for all the time.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for WLBT Plus. My name is Cara Shirley, and I am joined by Mr. CJ LeMaster. He is our chief investigative reporter here at WLBT. And CJ, we've got some stuff to talk about that's happened today.
Yeah, some breaking news that actually became public knowledge maybe 4 hours ago.
Mm-hmm.
We've been watching the federal docket very closely, the federal court system here. Because we've been hearing rumblings for the last 2 or 3 days about another person to be charged in this bribery scandal that has involved elected officials, at least one elected official with the city of Jackson, and potentially implicated the chief law enforcement officer of Hinds County, or prosecutor, I should say, the DA, Jody Owens. And so this is something that we've been following since the FBI raided his businesses several months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have a second person who has been charged by federal authorities in this case, these documents being unsealed about 8 this morning.
Wow. So that happened today, the him getting, is it charged, indicted? What's the correct word to use here?
So he was charged. There are 2 different ways that people can be charged, whether it's a federal case, a state case. You can be charged through what's called a bill of information,
Mm-hmm.
which is basically where a prosecutor is stating these allegations. These are all allegations until someone's been convicted, by the way,
Right.
or they decide to plead guilty. But these allegations either come in one of 2 forms. They're either from a prosecutor in the form of a bill of information, or more commonly, as we are used to seeing, they're from a jury, a grand jury that then returns what they call an indictment.
Mm-hmm.
And so to say that somebody's been indicted means that a grand jury has determined that. In this case, that has not happened. So if you've seen somewhere online where it says that so-and-so is indicted, that just goes to show that that particular news organization didn't read very well, to put it nicely. The documents here are bills of information. It means that this prosecutor, which would be Charles Kirkham, who's the assistant U.S. attorney in this case, has decided that there's enough information, there were enough things here to be able to move forward with this case, and that the defendant in this case, Sharik Marvay Smith, has waived his right to indictment by a grand jury. When typically we see that happen, that means that the government's case is strong, because you think of it this way. If I was a prosecutor and I came forward with documents saying that you were guilty of something,
Right.
That we believed you were guilty because of X, Y, and Z, would you want to just take that, or would you want to take your chances with a grand jury who might say, okay, you didn't provide enough evidence. We don't know that. Would you rather your fate rested in the hands of one person, a prosecutor, or 12 people, in the grand jury? And
That's such a
so
hard question.
it's tough. And so in this case, when you have situations where somebody skips, we saw this in the Goon Squad case, by the way,
Yeah.
where everybody was given bills of information. Nobody was actually indicted in those cases, by the way. That was all, it was all bills of information that moved forward. And those officers, former officers, pleaded guilty and decided to waive that. And so when those kinds of things happen, you tend to believe that the government has a strong case. And in this case, this is the second person now to waive a grand jury indictment and choose to plead guilty. Angelique Lee, of course, former Ward 2 councilwoman for the city of Jackson, was the first person to plead guilty back in August. And subsequently, actually right before she pleaded guilty, she resigned her position, which she would have been removed from office if she had pleaded guilty to a felony anyway.
And I was going to ask you that is what happened here with Marve Smith. It's the same thing as with Angelique.
Sure.
So that they kind of fell into the same line there.
To some degree, Marve, not an elected official. Many people at home probably don't even know his name, don't even know who he is. And we'll get into that today. We'll kind of, if you want to get an idea of where he fits in the cog of all these different pieces, because as we continue to see more dominoes fall, as it were, more people who are not in, again, I almost did it.
You always
not
did
indicted,
not indicted,
but charged by a prosecutor, charged by a charging document. As we see more people that are charged, the government in these documents reveals more about their case. They reveal more information. We kind of get more of an idea of other puzzle pieces. There are 5 people named in these documents, but not actually named by name. They are referred to as co-conspirators. There are also 2 confidential human sources that are mentioned. And so we have a lot of wiggle room as to who these other individuals will be. Based on this document that we received today, or that we got through the federal court system, there are 3 more individuals who have yet to be indicted, will likely be charged similarly to Marve. And those individuals, we don't know who they are at this point.
Right now, they're A, B, and C.
A, B, and C. But we do have some guesses as to who they might be. And that comes from the documents themselves and speculation, educated guesses as it were. So getting back to what you said before, as we learn more about this case and as we learn more information about the Fed's investigation, you kind of start to see what kind of case they're putting together. We knew that there were allegations of bribery at the beginning. One day after Hinds County District Attorney Jody Owens' office and his office there in the courthouse, and also to his cigar business, were raided, we got word from a source about what that specific search warrant looked like, what the federal charge for that search warrant was. We could not share that at the time because we could not divulge that information for fear that we would reveal a source. And we also, at that point, didn't have a lot of information tying that to other things. You have to understand, when those raids happened, and then we found out that there were council members who had taken these meetings with Jody Owens and with investors from out of town about a possible convention center hotel, we didn't know the 2 were related. We couldn't say the 2 were related. Now we can conclusively say it looks like the 2 were related. And when Angelique Lee then pleaded guilty and confirmed what the government had already put out, so there were no longer allegations anymore. When she pleads guilty, she's accepting that as fact, told the federal judge so much. Then we have another piece of the puzzle that's been unveiled. And so we can say that not only were those raids connected here, but we can also say that Hinds County District Attorney Jody Owens is believed to be connected to this bribery investigation, at least in so much as what federal documents have shown us. And so is he one of the unindicted co-conspirators?
Is he A, B, or C?
He likely. But we also won't know until that person actually is charged. And some of the individuals here may be taking plea deals and may not be charged at all. So you can't look at this as gospel. This is just where they are in the case right now.
Right. This gives us some clues as to it. And so in case anyone out there is unfamiliar with this.
Yeah.
So earlier this year, the FBI raided Hinds County DA Jody Owens, his office, as well as 2 of his businesses, as CJ just said. Then after those happened, CJ sat down with a couple of council people and learned that they had sat down with what they were told was investors looking to bring stuff here into Jackson, particularly into those certain wards that the council members were a part of. And it was Hinds County DA Jody Owens who facilitated those meetings with the supposed investors,
which is not criminal on its face, but it's certainly unusual for an elected official to have to have that sort of a hand in real estate development. And so, yeah, he was the common denominator between all these meetings. And so we talked to Ward 1 Councilman Ashby Foote. We talked to Ward 5 Councilman Vernon Hartley. They both took meetings with Jody and these alleged investors from Nashville. But both of the men they're used to taking these kinds of meetings. Foote in particular was like, these guys didn't seem like they knew what they were talking about. They didn't have business cards. They didn't really have a ton of things to show us. They didn't have renderings of what they were planning to do. They asked, how does Jackson work? Which seems like an unusual question on its face.
Odd question.
And so they got the impression that these investors were trying to feel them out for ways that they could be, I wouldn't say bribed, but ways that they could be coerced or how do things go? How do we get, if we want a contract for the city of Jackson, if we want to be able to bring a project here, how do we make that happen? And how do we do it without a doubt? And when you're asked questions like that, both council members, we're not putting any words in their mouths, by the way, both said that they got the feeling that they were not, like Hartley said, I'm not that guy, meaning I'm not the person who could be influenced in that way. Foote got the impression that they were asking about something or asking about something that seemed to be somewhat illegal. And neither of these men participated in these talks. Now, we know from subsequent developments that Angelique Lee was one of the council members who did give in to that and who did accept bribes in exchange for a future vote and was subsequently, arrested, charged, and pleaded guilty because those developers were not actually developers at all. They were FBI agents undercover.
Right. Which is something that we know now. We didn't know that at the time.
That's right.
Now, Marv A. Smith, who is the one who the bill of information came out for today, he is a business associate with Jody Owens. Is that correct?
Longtime associate, according to the charging document, which has a little bit of a clue. So, and again, I know we're throwing a lot of information at people today. We're not trying to be confusing at all. This whole real estate development, these developers were talking about a possible convention center hotel or property developed around the convention center downtown. And when Angelique Lee's information came forward from the federal government, there were more details that confirmed that they were indeed talking about a convention center hotel, not a real estate development, just vaguely, but specifically about that. Jody Owens' attorney, Rob McDuff, came out and talked about that as well and confirmed that as well. So we know that they're talking about the convention center hotel property. What made it interesting was that you had a situation where, they're talking about this convention center hotel. This is something that council members have talked about, and they were trying to get their company selected. We had already reported that one of 3 companies that submitted what you call, qualifications or bids for this. One of those was a company called Facility Solutions Team LLC. It was a company that was formed in Mississippi by Jody Owens. The organizational documents, the Secretary of State's office show that. It was actually formed a week after this qualifications thing was filed. So before it even existed, they submitted a request for the city to be considered with these faux investors. And if you look at that request for qualifications, it's dozens of pages. 2 local people are mentioned in there, Owens and Smith, who was named today. So that is the first concrete proof that Owens and Smith have a connection and have a connection to all of this because it's irrefutable. It's in a document that was submitted to the city of Jackson.
Right.
So that connects the 2 men. This document today further connects Smith with alleged co-conspirators who have yet to be named, saying that he helped facilitate and communicate bribes to two individuals who are only listed as city officials. One who had the power to give a vote, which means that had to have been a council person, and the other who had the power to push a deadline back and actually direct city officials to be able to do something.
Mm-hmm.
This is where it gets tricky. I've had people say, oh, well, then you're talking about, who are you talking about specifically? Well, in a mayor council form of government, council members are not allowed to direct city employees. Council members are not allowed to say, hey, I'm going to fire this officer, or hey, I need to reappoint a department head. That's all. They work at the pleasure, will and pleasure of the mayor.
So when you say they're not allowed to direct city employees, basically they're not in charge of them. They can't tell them what job they're doing, what job they're not doing, take them out of that role, anything.
No, they are part of the legislative branch of government, and the mayor, being part of the executive branch, has the power to control, or really by statute is vested with that power to control those individuals. You work at the will and pleasure of the mayor. You serve at the will and pleasure of the mayor. And so that is kind of strong enough to suggest that the mayor is one of these co-conspirators. But then when you talk about the fact that the two bribes mentioned in this document, one was to a council person. Mm-hmm. We believe that because it would have been a vote. And that was a $10,000 bribe to that person. Another $10,000 was given to another co-conspirator, alleged co-conspirator. And I'm going to read this to make sure that we get this right, because we're not trying to say anything that's not true. A $10,000 check from Smith to unindicted co-conspirator C's re-election committee using funds from these two individuals who were posing as developers but were actually undercover FBI agents, after those funds had been routed to an account or through an account belonging to another unindicted co-conspirator. Now, English, CJ, what does that mean? All right. Yeah. That means that Smith gave a check that it ultimately wound up in this unindicted co-conspirators re-election committee fund. So a PAC, political action committee, and it was funneled through another account, so it didn't look like it was coming from these developers by name. So it was coming from another business or another person or another organization to kind of shield where it was actually coming from. And here's where it gets interesting. We've already established that one of these co-conspirators had the power to vote, because it mentioned in there they were giving him this money in exchange for his vote. Right. The other.
So we know. Let's say this real quick. We know that then that person that has the power to vote is a council member.
Yeah, it has to be.
But it's not. It would not be Angelique Lee, because she has already been named.
That's right.
So this is going to be another
council member.
Okay.
We also know that in this case, the second person would have been somebody who directs people. Now, you might say, well, that doesn't necessarily mean the mayor. It could be a department head. That is true. Department heads can direct other city employees. Mm-hmm. Department heads are not elected. Department heads don't have a committee to elect them. Department heads don't run for elected office. They're appointed.
They work at the will of the mayor.
That's right. Yeah. The mayor is the only person outside of the council who is duly elected with the power to direct individuals here. So, we're not saying conclusively today that Mayor Lumumba is one of these three, but we're saying that the information in this federal document strongly suggests that the person who received a $10,000 bribe had a re-election committee associated with them, campaign fund, right? Mm-hmm. And had the power to direct individuals in the city and push deadlines back. And so, I'll let people who are watching draw their own conclusions as to who that is. But we can tell you that the council members do not have the power to do that. And so there aren't many other elected officials in the city of Jackson that have that kind of authority. In fact, there are almost none. It would only be the mayor's office.
So we're looking at one of the three that are not named, one of the A, B, or C. One of them is a council member. Mm-hmm. One of them signs point that it could be Jackson Mayor Lumumba. Yeah. We don't know that conclusively, but that is what the evidence is leading to. And then the third person mentioned, do we have an idea of who that is? The A, B, and C.
Yeah. Well, and A is either the Hinds County DA or it's somebody else that we don't know. And because the documents, again, this is from the federal government, the charging documents say that Smith was a longtime associate of co-conspirator A. So he had a business relationship with him. Well, the documents we have from the city show that Jody Owens did have a working relationship with him because they were involved in trying to get this convention center hotel together. We don't know past that whether or not Owens is in here, but we know that Owens' business and office were raided. And we know that the documents showed that the charge for the pursuant to that search warrant was theft or bribery concerning federal funds. Marve Smith is charged with conspiracy to commit bribery. And he, along with others, are charged with making this happen. And if this money was funneled through co-conspirator A, it stands to reason that co-conspirator A has businesses or other LLCs, organizations that could make that happen to conceal the transmission of that money.
So we have a lot of questions here. I'm going to go to one question we saw earlier from YouTube. Seashells Property said, who replaced Angelique Lee? Well, we don't have a decision on that yet. No, there's going to be a runoff election on the 22nd.
That's right, next week. Yeah, it's between two candidates, and the candidates escape me right now, so I apologize for that. But you had a pretty crowded race in Ward 2, and so it looked pretty likely that we were going to see a runoff anyway. And so now we have the top two candidates who are going to go forward. And hopefully we'll be able to have a resolution in that very soon. Next week, with only two candidates in that runoff, it should be a pretty quick. We should know that night, hopefully, depending on how quickly the city gets results back to us, who is going to represent Ward 2 going forward.
We have another question here from Matthew Young. Matthew says, a question statement says that may be true, but there are more than the mayor that has the authority, but because of their position, they don't want to say who it is.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with Matthew there because, again, if you're only looking at the person who has the power to direct people, that is true. As we said earlier in this newscast, we said that you don't have to, you could be a department head and have influence or be able to exert control over people. The head of public works exerts control over public works employees. The head of planning and development is over people like that. Chief Police Joe Wade is in charge of officers. We know that. None of those individuals are elected. None. And so where it becomes different, again, based on what the feds are saying, is this has to be a person who's over individuals, who has the power to direct employees and has an election, a re-election committee fund. And that's key. Re-election. That's not somebody who's trying to run for office. That's not somebody who is throwing their hat in the ring for the first time. That's somebody who's running for re-election. That means they're already duly elected. It means they're already in office. And so, who has the power to do both of those things? So I'm not advocating for or against anybody here. Yeah. I'm talking about what the federal documents say, the stuff that we got today that for the first time paints more of a picture of who these unindicted and unnamed co-conspirators could be.
And at this time, we do not have a timeline or not aware of any kind of timeline to when the A, B, and C people named in this will be, their information will be released. Will we know who those are? We don't know when that's going to happen.
Yeah, and we don't. And that's the problem. When this came forward with Angelique, we have an idea, and I'm not going to share here today which council member this is. And the reason I say that is because we've talked to a couple of council members on the record about this. We don't have conclusive information because you've got 5 other council members. Actually, you've got, so we've talked to 2 who have said that they were not involved in this. You have 1, obviously, who has already pleaded guilty. So math here, we got 4 who could be involved here. Not everybody has gone on the record as saying that they're not involved. And so, we have a strong suspicion as to who this other person might be, but we can't say that at this time because, again, there's more than one possibility. If there was more than one possibility on the unindicted co-conspirator C,
that is seeking re-election,
then we would put that out there.
Yeah,
and and that's true. I'm looking at Matthew's comments. Beyond reasonable doubt, innocent until proven guilty. That is true. You are innocent until proven guilty. And this information that we're sharing with you today all the information as it relates to Marve Smith, right?
Yes.
Since he's pleaded guilty, that information, we don't have to say they're allegations anymore.
No.
Once you plead guilty to information the government gives you, you're saying that that information is fact.
Just like with Angelique Lee, we don't have to say it was
Yeah.
she allegedly did this. We know that it happened.
But to Matthew's point, the information pertaining to Marve Smith is true. But we also can't say that any of the information that is in here talking about these other co-conspirators is magically true because Marve Smith pleaded guilty to his portion.
Mhm.
We can't say that. You know, people make mistakes all the time. As we saw with, as we've seen recently with investigations, sometimes you arrest somebody and sometimes you have to let them go because you don't have the evidence,
Right.
or the evidence doesn't support that person. So, yeah, I mean, there's always a chance that individuals who are mentioned here may not actually be involved, may not actually have done anything wrong. And the government's case, in part may be accurate and in part maybe not. But innocent until proven guilty. In this case, though, Smith pleaded guilty today. He pleaded not guilty initially, and then less than 2 hours later decided to change it to guilty.
I didn't realize that. Wow.
Yeah, he did that this morning. And so I don't know what that says about the case. Normally in these situations, when you have a bill of information go forward, the individual pleads guilty.
And we talk a lot, you know, there's not, we can say, there's a lot we cannot say, we won't say, because we don't report on just pure speculation.
Mhm.
We can't say, oh, well, we think it's this person if we don't have the evidence pointing to that. We
Yeah.
have evidence pointing to a couple of the people named, or the A and B named here.
Right.
We don't have a clear indication of what one of those people or who one of those people are.
That's right.
So we're not going to say, oh, we think it's this council person, because if
No.
it's not, then that's a lot of damage that we could be doing to that person's reputation and their livelihood, their job.
And I'll tell you, just kind of like peer behind the curtain as far as how we look at investigations too. If we had credible information that was vetted, that showed a clear, concise link between these individuals not named, and if there was evidence that really showed that A, B, and C were this person, and this person, and we knew it conclusively,
Mhm.
and we were able to get that vetted and make sure, dot all our I's and cross our T's, then we would put that information out there. But as it stands right now, those A, B's, and C's, you can speculate all day, but until the federal government decides to move forward with charging those other individuals, we don't conclusively know who they are. We only know what the possibilities could be.
Mhm.
Co-conspirator A may not be the Hinds County DA. It may be somebody else that Marve Smith is friends with. It may be somebody else that had an account that had access to that. We have one of 4 council members that could have been co-conspirator B. And as far as C is concerned, unless this federal information is wrong, it could be the mayor. But again, we may not be seeing the complete picture here. And
What
so
is the
we don't know.
likelihood? And this it's probably going to sound like a stupid question, but I'm willing to ask it.
Yeah.
What is the likelihood of the information that the feds have in this document, in this, what is it? It's not an indictment. What's it called again?
Bill of information.
Bill of information. So
Yeah.
what is the likelihood that the information in this bill of information is incorrect?
There's always a chance. And so you take it with a grain of salt. It's sort of like when you see us run a story and say that so-and-so has been arrested for a crime.
Mhm.
And I know we're talking local police versus the feds, and obviously there's some differences there. There's always the chance that somebody who's arrested for a crime may not have done it. Because again, you're innocent until proven guilty. If you've been arrested for something, you still have to go through the proper procedure, go before a judge. You still have to be, tried before a jury of your peers if you choose to do so, or at least have your day in court to be able to defend yourself. And so you can't just take arrest as equaling that the person did it. We've seen many times locally that this doesn't always pan out.
Mhm.
And I'm not picking at anybody, but most recently we've seen that with the Jackson State University case
Right.
involving,
Jalen is the one.
That's
He
right.
lost his life.
Jalen lost his life more than a year ago, and Joshua Brown was arrested and then later released when information was provided to us and to the public that showed that there was no way that he could have actually been the person involved there. And so you have to just
Mistakes
understand that.
happen.
That's right.
With anybody, any job, mistakes happen. But with we know just a small portion of the time that has gone into this, just from knowing when the raids happen, when the meetings happened with the two councilmen, with the what we know now to be FBI informants, or undercover FBI rather, but we know how much time has gone into this, a little bit of how much time has gone, and it's been a lot. It's been a lot. So the likelihood that there is something false in there or incorrect, it could happen, but they've put a lot of time into this, and I don't see them moving forward to this extent without knowing that their I's are dotted, their T's are crossed.
And this is not something that occurs in a vacuum. The FBI has been involved in many cases where they have set up people to come in as developers and look at situations where somebody might be susceptible. And the other question that these documents don't answer is what got the feds looking here in Jackson in the first place.
Why did it start?
And that's a $64,000 question that we can't answer yet, and we don't know that. And only after this case is completed and all the parties involved have been charged would we may be able to talk to some of these federal prosecutors, the U.S. attorney, for example, and ask and see. They may actually let us know at that point, or it might come out over the course of court. The problem is when you don't have a trial and when you have people that just plead guilty, is there's so much more information that comes out as the result of a trial that's not present in this 5-page document that we got from the the U.S. District Court this morning. And so some of these questions that taxpayers have a right to know about.
They do.
Taxpayers have a right to see. We may never get answers to that. We're certainly going to try to see what we can do and get answers to that. But there may be questions left unanswered. And to your point about the timeline earlier, we don't know when these other people are going to be arrested and charged. We have no idea.
We don't.
And
so let's assume, hypothetically, let's put this out there. Let's say hypothetically that one person is Jody Owens, the other person is a council member, the other person is the mayor. What happens with them in those roles if a bill of information or an indictment comes for them?
Well, they have two choices. As this information gets closer and closer to being released, as these cases are still being formed, because if the feds were completely done with their cases, you would think that all this would have already been served already. All of these individuals would have been named and it would have been put out there. So obviously there are still things that are being worked on. It depends on how much evidence is there. I think, and again, we're speculating here, but I'm not going to say anybody that you named. I'm just going to say in general for somebody who's in this position, right? Regardless whether it's the mayor or the DA or whoever. You're presented with this information and you have to make a choice as to whether or not you feel like the government has you dead to rights. If you don't feel like they do and you feel like you have a shot at winning and you are unjustly accused, to have your day in court. Go forward with a trial. As an elected official, a trial that may be several days, that may take a while, is going to be in the public eye a whole lot longer. A trial is we're going to have coverage of that. So there's that to consider. The court of public opinion is very powerful.
Yes, it is.
Somebody asked earlier if this was a felony or a misdemeanor, and this is a felony, a federal charge here that's against Mr. Smith. But you have to weigh that option of, do I just say, okay, I did this, and just go on? I'll tell you right now, people will say something in court and then say something completely different. When I was in court for Angelique Lee's not sentencing, but when she pleaded guilty, conviction, before the judge, the judge asked her if what was in this charging document was correct. And she said yes, including, and what the government told her or told the courtroom, which was that the FBI had raided her house too and other things. And she said yes, confirming all of that. She then tells one of our reporters here, after reading a story online, that her house wasn't raided. So immediately when I found that out, told our Anthony Warren, who's been covering the case too, both of us have. So then I reached out to her attorney
Mhm.
And I'm like, hey, can you confirm whether or not the FBI raided her home? And he said, well, it was said in open court. Yeah, of course. And so I told Anthony that.
Anthony is one of our digital writers,
That's
by the way,
right.
in case you don't know.
Yeah. And so that's a situation where even though this person had already said in court that these things were true, when another reporter reached out to them who was not in court that day and didn't hear what she said,
Mhm.
she proceeded to say the opposite. So, people may get in that courtroom and say one thing and then say a different thing to our cameras or to us on the record.
That's true.
And if you're an elected official, or I can say now a former elected official, maybe you're trying to save face a little bit. But all I know is that in this case, particularly, these individuals are going to have to look at what the government has and make a decision on whether or not they want to fight it, if they think they have a shot, if they think it's unjust, if they are innocent, or if they want to go ahead and plead guilty. And you also have to consider the fact that Angelique Lee's sentencing has been pushed back.
That is right. So she was supposed to be sentenced
next month,
and it has been pushed to what we know to be December now,
right.
But it could possibly get pushed more. Someone just asked here, Sheila Scott. Hi, Sheila. Thank you for tuning in today. She's here a lot. How many years is the felony charges, or how many years are they facing for those felony charges?
So that's a good question. So in the case of Smith, conspiracy to commit bribery carries with it no more than 5 years imprisonment, no more than $250,000 fine, and no more than 3 years supervised release. That's if that stays in place. And obviously, if he's pleaded guilty now, there may be a kind of a plea deal being worked out. And part of that deal may be cooperating with investigators. And that's kind of what we were going with the Angelique Lee thing. We don't know that she's talking to anybody right now, but I can tell you this. We talk to law enforcement and prosecutors all the time. When somebody's sentencing is pushed back repeatedly, and this is only once for Angelique, but when it's pushed back, you have to allow for the consideration as to why it's being pushed back. Is it being pushed back simply because the court had a conflict, because she couldn't be there that day? Is it because she's cooperating with authorities? And we don't have the luxury of knowing exactly what's in that plea agreement, what's in the fine print in terms of whether or not she's a cooperating witness at this point. So that stands to reason whether or not she's cooperating with the feds. And if she is, then it could make the cases against these other three that are currently unnamed and unindicted that much stronger.
But we're not talking about a lot of jail time. I mean,
not for conspiracy to commit bribery. Now, we don't know what the other possible charges could be with the other people because we haven't seen what the government has.
It's a lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot. And it's kind of like the world's longest puzzle. It takes the longest time to put together because we have to wait to get these pieces. But as soon as we get them in and we put the dots together, follow the lines, the paper trail and all that stuff, we bring you guys the information.
I mean, we'll say this, even before this document came out today, people were speculating who in the city's administration could have played a role in this, whether it's the mayor or somebody else. And I'll tell you why they were doing that, because when the stuff came out with Angelique Lee, they were giving her this money in exchange for a vote. But the way the procurement process works in the mayor council form of government in Mississippi is, we look at it with the garbage contract as a good example because people are familiar with that, having worked through it some degree. You send out a request for proposals. You get these qualifications or statements from companies that want to do that project. And then an organization, a committee, if you will, from the mayor's administration, not spearheaded by the mayor directly, but just from the administration, scores those three bids or however many you get. And the mayor's office recommends the lowest and best based on this scoring. And we hear all the time, administration will say, well, it's an independent process. It's an independent scoring system. When we found out that they were giving Angelique money for her vote, it stands to reason that if they're trying to bribe her for her vote, they're probably trying to bribe somebody else before it gets there. Because again, the way this process works is these three or however many companies are scored. The mayor's office recommends the lowest and best to the council. All the council can do is vote yay or nay. That's all they can do. The council can't select the company. That's my point.
Mm-hmm.
And so to ask for Angelique's vote means that somebody else has already selected the company you want. Was that person also paid? And that's what we're starting to wonder about here. And we don't have conclusive evidence at this point of that process, but we're getting more of a look into the federal government's case. And hopefully in the coming months, we'll know more.
Hopefully sooner.
Yeah.
Hopefully
Yeah.
sooner. I'd like
Yeah.
to know exactly what all is going on behind the scenes there.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're going to continue to follow it. I know CJ has given us a little bit of insight of just the lines that you followed here this morning, just this morning.
Probably made you more confused than we started. So I'm sorry for that. I'm not trying to.
No, but he's continually researching, looking, investigating into this stuff. And so there's going to be more. I know CJ is going to be able to pull out some more, some more things in this to give us some more direction as to who it possibly could be. Everybody has an opinion, but there's only one fact, and we don't know what that is yet.
No, we don't. And I'll tell you right now that we're not going to conclusively say anything until we have proof.
Right.
And again, because somebody will ask us, well, if I'm playing devil's advocate, you look at this document that's on our website that you can read it for yourself too at wlbt.com. You can see the bill of information for yourself. And when you see that, you're going to have questions. People are going to ask, hey, who is A? Who is B? Who is C? Well, we don't know, but here are the possibilities that it could be, because when the government starts saying, we're not going to tell you the name of the person, but this person was expected to do this, or this person received that, or this person did this. They're painting a picture without actually saying it. And the government's not ready to say that name until they actually name that person and actually bring charges against that person. But listen, if it is somebody else that could have been the third co-conspirator here, then if I'm an elected official and I know it looks like it might be me and it could have been somebody else, I'd be getting a statement out.
Yes, I would.
And I'd be saying, hey, it could also be somebody else. And this is not, me or whatever. And so we've reached out to council members to try to kind of get their take on this. And some have not gotten back to us, and that's okay. Hopefully we'll be able to talk to somebody. Anthony reached out to the city, and the city spokesperson is not commented on this, has declined to comment. And that doesn't mean anything. They just aren't talking about it.
Right. And that's to be expected.
With an ongoing investigation, it's probably the safest move. But at the same time, too, there's something to be said for getting out in front of something. And we may end up seeing that at some point. We may actually see that happen. Representation for Jody Owens has come out saying that that none of this impacted his job as DA, and also has, to some degree, tried to show that he was an unwitting participant and that he was not involved in any criminal aspect of this, from Rob McDuff, at least from what, and again, I'm paraphrasing because I don't have his statement in front of me.
Right.
But, obviously his lawyer is saying that there's more to the story than what we really know right now. And it would benefit everybody to know conclusively everything about what's going on.
Right. Now, what I did for you guys that are watching on any of our social media streams, we're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, our website, where else? A lot of places. But I posted the link to the story from today that Anthony and CJ did. So you can read this bill of information.
Yeah.
You can read all the information for yourself and even come up with your own conclusions on things if you want. But we are going to continue to follow this. I know CJ is, he's like, he's a cute little bulldog with it.
Never been described like that. Is that because I went to Mississippi State? No,
Yes, it is.
Oh, gosh.
Yes.
Oh,
No.
Wonderful. Wonderful. No, I think when we have these kinds of stories that come out, it just breeds rampant speculation on social media, which is kind of what social media is known for anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Who cares about the facts? Let's just put something out there. But I think until we conclusively know, we have to be very careful.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk about somebody getting money for a vote, then it has to be council members or a council member. Who else could it be? You already had one council member who pleaded guilty. So it has to be somebody else. That's safe to say. We know that. again, if the government's information is correct. And you got to give a little bit of credibility to it, because you had one person, now two people, pleading guilty to information in this. You had Angelique Lee pleading guilty 2 months ago. You have Marve Smith pleading guilty now. The more people that plead guilty, the more you're likely to think, okay, well, maybe the government's onto something here. Would all these different folks, some in elected positions, just decide to plead guilty if it wasn't true? And
I can't imagine that happening.
Right.
Can't imagine that happening. But so that's what we got for you right now. Make sure you are tuning in to WLBT tonight, to our newscast, so that you can get more information on this. I know we'll have some more information in our newscast. Also, make sure you download the WLBT News app so you can get those notifications anytime we have breaking news, whether it be this or anything. Also, before we go, there was that tragic accident that happened in Simpson County yesterday. I just want to say that our hearts and our thoughts and prayers go out to the family of all of those that are involved, the victims and first responders that were there on the scene. Our thoughts and prayers go out to them very much so. That's going to be the end of WLBT Plus today. However, tomorrow I get lucky enough to have CJ back in here with me again. How lucky am I for that? No, CJ is going to be here with us tomorrow, and we're going to be joined by who is it that's coming in?
So Jerry Mitchell.
Jerry Mitchell.
I mean, I think he's I know for a fact he's the most influential and one of the best investigative journalists that we have in the state. And when I think about Jerry, I think of Jerry. Of course, we talk about Anna Wolf, who won a Pulitzer for her coverage of everything with the welfare scandal and everything. And Jerry, of course, a Pulitzer finalist. But the work that Jerry Mitchell has done has put Klansmen behind bars. I mean, wow. It's incredible what he's done. The research he's undergone, his body of work is incredibly impressive. And Jerry has been doing this for, my goodness, maybe longer than I've been alive. I'm not trying to date you unfairly, Jerry, if you're watching, but he is just, he's all over it. And, he has been at the forefront of these Goon Squad stories and the investigations there. And
which is what we're going to be talking about tomorrow is the Goon Squad investigation and some work that we're going to be doing. WLBT is going to be doing with Jerry Mitchell, CJ and Jerry, and they're going to be both in here with us to talk about it. And hopefully you think we'll get some information that we have not yet been privy to.
We might. I think the big thing with Jerry and having him on tomorrow is going to be just making sure that people know that, if you're watching at home, and I want people to take away from this, if they watch our stories tonight, anytime they watch an investigative piece, anytime they see anything that we're doing, right? I want them to feel comfortable. I want you to feel comfortable with coming forward and letting us know if you have something happen. If there's something going on that shouldn't be, doesn't matter if it's City of Jackson, Rankin County, Madison, I don't care where it happens.
Right.
Let us know. If you have documentation, if you have evidence, let us see it. Let us know. Let us dig into that and see if there's something going on. If there's something corrupt going on, doesn't matter where it's happening. We want to know about it. We want to try to make sure we can root it out. We want to get it out there. Sunshine is the best disinfectant. You get it out there, and that's how we have positive change from exposing these things that are unfortunately happening. Jerry and all of us here at WLBT are in a unique position. Of course, Jerry is with Mississippi Today, the Center for Investigative Reporting, which is part of Mississippi Today. The only way that we're able to get information out that can truly change lives is by people trusting us with what's happened to them. Michael Corey Jenkins and Eddie Terrell Parker did that through their attorney and separately. Other people have come forward and have talked to Jerry Mitchell and his colleagues with the New York Times about situations where the Rankin County Sheriff's Department, certain deputies had infringed upon their rights. We want to know if something like that has happened to you, and we want to be able to put that kind of call out there for people to be able to come forward and share those stories with us and tell us about this, because if there's one thing that the whole Goon Squad situation taught us, it's that this didn't happen in a vacuum. These guys were so meticulous about wanting to cover this up, about the steps taken, about planting a gun, about all these things, that it looked like it was second nature. And when it looks like it's second nature, it is. This wasn't their first rodeo. And so it's very important for us to know that, for the public to know, for all of you watching to know that what happened to you, if something did happen, if you had a run-in or somebody abused you or took advantage of you or violated your rights, what happened to you matters. And telling your story and giving us background on it, even if you don't want to come on camera, helps us root out these bad cops, helps us get through these problems and get them out there so that hopefully people won't be abused and violated like this again. And so that to me is what we really need to have. And we need people. I couldn't do this without tips. I couldn't do this without people trusting us and coming forward. And so, especially in such a sensitive situation as that, we need folks to be able to trust us and trust us to be able to get their stories out.
Which is why we are so big on telling you when, we have information, but we necessarily can't release it because we don't have it confirmed. We're not going to release anything, tell you anything that we don't have confirmed. We're not going to tell you that it's the truth if we don't know for sure that it is the truth. But so that's going to happen tomorrow here on WLBT Plus. We'll have Jerry and CJ here talking about the Goon Squad and more work that we're going to be doing on that. Then next Tuesday, we're going to have Bridget Todd and Kevin Camp. They're going to be in here for WLBT Plus talking about the Carly Gregg trial. They were the defense attorneys for Carly Gregg, and they will be here talking to us about their JNOV that they filed, which is kind of like an appeal, but it's not. It's called a JNOV, and it's asking the judge to either set aside the verdict or to do a new trial. But they're going to be here Tuesday of next week to talk to us. That's Bridget Todd and Kevin Camp. We got a lot of good shows lined up for everybody going forward over the next week or so. A lot of good information, and we really want you to be a part of it and join us because, like CJ said, especially with tomorrow and with Jerry coming in tomorrow, we need your help. And we want to be able to not only get your help, but we want to be able to help you guys as well. Bring the evil to light so that it can be snuffed out.
That's
hopefully.
Right. Well, and just like I think back to the investigation that Anthony and I did with the Pauper Cemetery here, where people trusted us to come forward and talk about their family members, and in some cases didn't even know their family members were dead until they saw a list on our website or saw reporting from us talking about that. It's unfortunate when these things happen, but all of you deserve to, if something happens that shouldn't be happening, and we're talking corruption, we're talking about things that we would look into, possible illegal activity, unethical activity, you deserve to have your voice heard. And sometimes it's through a post on Facebook if you like that sort of thing. But if it's something major, and especially if it's indicative of a larger problem, we already know that this kind of activity was happening in Rankin County. It's beneficial to get out as much as we can and try to get people to know that they can come forward and feel comfortable telling us about these things. The only way this is truly going to be resolved, and we're not just talking about the sheriff's department, by the way, we're talking about law enforcement in Rankin County. So other police departments, if you've had situations where somebody in Richland or Florence or Pearl or Brandon or Flowood, an officer there has violated your rights, tell us. This stuff doesn't happen in a vacuum. And only with your help can we truly get to the bottom of this and hold these officers and these departments accountable if they're not doing everything they need to do to protect and serve you.
And on the same token there, CJ, it's important for us to be able to do this so that we can bring to light those that are the bad officers, and so that we can remove those bad apples from that barrel, because there are a lot of good officers out there. There are a lot of good officers that are working to protect and serve every day and doing what they have a promise to do as a police officer. And so we want to make sure that not only do we weed out the bad, we point out the bad, but we also want to acknowledge that we know that there is good. And this bad happening is not fair to the ones that are doing good.
That's right.
No, it's not fair to the victims, and it's not fair to the other law enforcement officers that are doing their job the way they're supposed to.
That's right. I mean, we look at things all the time. I look at the event that just happened, the incident that just happened in Pearl, where people on social media were saying that the officer who responded to that wreck off of 468, that an individual who ended up having a heart attack, that somebody kneeled on somebody's neck or something, and we don't have confirmation. That's just stuff that was going on social media. Pearl police came out, or City of Pearl came out and said that did not happen. We have body camera and dash camera video that shows the officer did not do that. Okay, release it. Show us the body camera footage. Show us the dash camera footage. We've requested it, actually. But I can count on my left hand how many times a department has actually released body camera or dash camera footage. They rarely do. So my question always is, well, if we're going to have these body cameras there that supposedly protect the public, then why is it when things like this happen, we don't release the video to help protect the public?
Yeah.
Because if we're not releasing it, then I don't know. I'm a skeptical person. Maybe that's why I'm a reporter. But I like to think that when somebody isn't releasing something, is it because they truly don't want to? Is it because there's no need to? Or is it because they have something to hide? And so we need to be able to see that these officers did nothing wrong. That makes us do our job more effectively. That makes people who live in those municipalities know that those officers have their best interests at heart. And it's a rebuilding period for the Rankin County Sheriff's Department, and will be for a long time.
It will, unfortunately so, but it will be. So that's going to be happening again tomorrow. A lot of stuff. We've given you a lot of information today. Make sure you go to the website and you read the story for yourself today of what happened with the second person was given a bill of information. They pleaded guilty to federal charges of bribery in connection with what has happened with Angelique Lee earlier this year. And so that, go to the website to read that story, and join us tomorrow at 1:00 as we sit down with CJ and Jerry for additional information on the Goon Squad. And then of course, next Tuesday, when I sit down with Bridget Todd and Kevin Kemp talking about Carly Gregg.
It'll get a little crowded in here.
It's going to get a little crowded. Might want to cut the AC on a little higher in here. But all right, guys, thank you so much for joining us for WLBT Plus today. I do appreciate each and every one of you that not only tune in and watch, but you join the conversation in the comments. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. We'll be back tomorrow at 1:00. You guys have a great day. Bye.